Welcome to the Sherry Andrea Psychic Empath Show with your host, Sherry Andrea. Sherry Andrea brings her listeners interesting discussions and topics related to empathy, psychic and spiritual development, as well as energy work. She is herself a psychic empath, healer, coach, author, and founder of SherryAndrea.com. Welcome, and here is your host, Sherry Andrea.
Hello, and welcome to the Sherry Andrea Psychic Empath Show. Welcome to all of you that are listening. Today's show is going to be about empathy, and specifically being an empathic sponge. Today we're going to have a really special guest, Brandy Jasmine, and I think you will really, really like our guest today. But before we get to our guest host today, like I said, today's show is going to be about being an empathic sponge. Now, as some of you know, an empath is someone who has the ability to feel others' emotions, pain, as though they're their own emotions, to a point where they actually can't tell if they're sad, if they're feeling depressed, that it's not them, where they actually feel like they cannot tell that that is not their own emotion. And often, for an empath, that really gets by us. We, of course, become more skilled at it to the point where we become more able to tell when these things that we pick up and these connections that we pick up to other people are not our own. For example, when we're feeling perfectly fine and we're happy, or we're even excited about something, and then suddenly we have a sudden change where suddenly we're depressed, or suddenly we feel a great amount of anxiety or sadness. We can tell, we become skilled to the point where we can tell, well, it came on so suddenly, there's no explanation for it. I have no reason to be sad. I have no reason to be depressed. And we actually get to the point where we become more skilled, and we can actually tell that it's not our own emotion that we're picking up. But empaths also, most days, feel as though they're actually an empathic sponge, whereas they're going through their day, they're literally picking up everything that's around them. Whether it's picking up things from people that they come into contact with, just simply going out to the grocery store, the people you pass walking down the aisle, our friends, our family, the things we pick up from them, whether we're in their presence or not. Because empathy is metaphysical. And like any metaphysical ability, it's not limited by time and space. So it doesn't matter whether the person we're feeling is on the other side of the country or on the other side of the world. We have the ability to connect to and to feel them regardless of where they are related to time and space. An empath who also has natural mediumship abilities also can pick up this same experience from spirits from the other side that they come into contact with. They can actually pick up the emotions of spirits who are in their presence. So as you can imagine, when I speak of an empath being an empathic sponge, you can understand why for an empath, this is a problem often. And often we actually feel like it affects our lives in a great way. So much so to the point where a lot of empaths feel like they are not able to live a really good, happy, normal existence like other people, because this is something that they're constantly fighting with. This is something that is constantly always a part of something they deal with day in and day out. However, of course, you do not have to live life that way. Once most people realize that they're an empath, they begin to research and learn how to deal with it. They research and they learn more about it. They learn how to become skilled, what things are important to learn, so that they can, in fact, live the life almost of a non-empath. so that they have control over it. Now, empaths are transmuters of negative energy. You could say they're transmuters of energy, period. But most often, the way we put it is that empaths are transmuters of negative energy. For that reason, you could imagine that there are many who are drawn to an empath because of the energy that they sense from them. It's not something that can be seen, but many people sense it. Many empaths often hear things like, oh, I don't know what it is about you. I love being in your presence. Every time I speak to you, I just automatically feel better. Every time I speak to you, I just feel happier, or whatever it is I'm upset about just seems to kind of melt away. And that's a normal experience for dealing with an empath, because an empath takes on what you're dealing with and actually transmutes it. But in the process, often we end up getting a connection to whatever it is that is being transmuted through us. And if we're not skilled, we hold on to that. Instead of it just running through us like a conduit, it instead seems to sit and stay with us. And they walk away feeling great, and we're actually left feeling anywhere from whatever the emotion is they were feeling to actually ill. And when I say ill, I mean ill as in anywhere from just not feeling a little well to literally almost feeling like you're going to be violently ill, depending on how strong that negative energy was that you picked up and how much negative energy you picked up. Maybe you've picked up a lot of negative energy throughout the day and it's just been stacking on. Or maybe you got into a conflict with someone, an argument, and there was just a lot of negative energy being thrown out by the other person or both of you, and it can really hit you to the point where you literally physically feel it. And so that is the reason why the topic of discussion of are you an empathic sponge and are you feeling that way day in and day out is so important. Also, even though empaths, they know that the one thing they must do is to find out how to become skilled, even after becoming a skilled empath, often we still do feel like we're still being that. We're still the empathic sponge. That doesn't stop. We just learn to control it. We just learn to deal with things like becoming more educated at breaking connections, at learning to ground ourselves and keep ourselves grounded. We become better at things like that. We never actually stop being an empathic sponge. I refer to it as the moth being drawn to a flame experience. And that is what it resembles in a way. A moth, there's something in a moth where a moth has innately in it this urge to be drawn to a flame, but the actual flame that a moth is drawn to is the natural light, moonlight, God's light. And so a moth spends its whole life trying to find this light and seeking out this light. Often, the moth mistakes the flame for the light. It doesn't know the difference. To it, it sees the light, so it's like, oh, there's the light, and it starts going towards it. So I consider the whole empathic sponge thing as also being the moth drawn to a flame experience, because you will actually begin as an empath to feel like that, to feel like you are the flame and all the people who are around you and who are attracted to you, the ones that you find every day, they're on your doorstep, ringing your doorbell, they're here again, they're drawn to you. You are the one that they go to if they need help. You are the one that they go to if they have a problem, if they just need somebody to talk to. You're usually the first one that they think about. just when they want to spend time with someone, when they don't want to be alone. And I call that the moth to a flame experience. Now, in a minute, we're going to be bringing on Brandy Jasmine, and I'm going to actually play an introduction so you can know a little bit more about her and what she offers as a guest host today. And I am going to play that introduction right now because I believe she's on the line. And we will be right back with you. Brandy Jasmine is an intuitive consultant and astrologer who is a student of astrology, tarot, numerology, palmistry, and biblical history. Nothing in her life had prepared her for an unplanned psychic awakening in the early 1980s. Confused, frightened, and alone, she searched for 2 years for answers. Within that time, scared, she reached out to a relative, sharing her visions and dreams. They went to church together, and the sermon turned out to be Visions and Dreams, God's Way of Communicating. From that, she decided right then that she needed to learn more about these experiences, and her explorations of the psychic world brought her to explore and study many different fields of consciousness. Miss Jasmine was a featured busker at the Granville Island Public Market, worked in traveling psychic fairs, and was a featured reader in the Psychic Circle Mall fairs in British Columbia. We are pleased to have with us today guest host Brandy Jasmine, author of Living with Your Psychic Gifts, which is filled with compassionate, understanding, and practical advice on how to accept and live with your psychic abilities. And now, here is your guest host today, Brandy Jasmine. Hi, okay, this is Sherry Andrea back, and I have on the line with me, Brandy, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, great. Okay, I'm glad to see that I was able to connect you without disconnecting you.
That's good.
How are you today?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much. And you?
I am great. I am so excited to have you on today, and I think that everyone else will be too. You have so much to offer in the way of knowledge. I was thoroughly impressed with your study since you awakened in the 1980s, and from astrology, tarot, numerology, palmistry, and biblical history.
Absolutely, yes.
Now, you, on your website, you actually talk about your awakening in 1980 and how it was difficult and scary for you, and how that is what led you to seek more, how that led you to question and seek more information. And you said that you had actually a relative that you went and spoke to about it. Now,
yes.
often many people, the experience they have is, who do I talk to about this? Who's open enough? Did you already know that this was a relative that would be open to hearing about these experiences that you had?
In fact, I knew she wouldn't be. My whole family are fundamentalist Pentecostal Christians. And when she heard about these experiences and how I had sort of phrased it to her was I was having visions and dreams, and they were quite frightening to me because even though I would be, I wasn't really at that point in time a very serious Christian in at least not by her definition. I still, that was my background, that was all I kind of knew, and the experiences that I were having were so out of sync with those expectations that of course they were frightening to me. And so she, reacted in a very fear-based manner herself and dragged me off to church. And to our complete shock, the sermon that day was on visions and dreams and how they're God's way of communicating with you. And my reaction to that was, well, if the big guy is okay with this, it must be okay.
Exactly.
And, it took me a long time really to get to, I had that intellectual understanding, that insight right away, but emotionally it took me a very long time to get there. And back in the 80s, we didn't have James Von Prague, we didn't have Sylvia Browne, we didn't have all these people out here, some of whom are better than others, but all of whom have contributed to an atmosphere of much less fear where it comes to this topic. And so I was pretty much on my own. And I started running into other people after I finally, I would think it was about a 5-year process that where I finally come to acceptance of it, that I started running into other people that had the same experiences. And to a person, we all said, "Oh my God, I thought I was the only one."
Right.
And that is something that to this day, I still get. It's many years later, and there's much more information out there, but it really hasn't sunk all the way down into the mainstream yet.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I totally agree, and I still hear that a lot also. Now, I'm curious. So when you wanted to learn more, where did you go? I mean, because that's usually the question when I communicate with different people from different places. Some of us have, tons of bookstores that we can rely on, places that give classes, but many people still live in towns where there is nowhere to go. So
true, and you didn't have the internet back then either.
Right. So what did you rely on?
At first, I went to church. The church where I had that first experience, I also had another very powerful experience that I don't always share in detail with people because a lot of people are not ready to hear it. But it really shattered my faith in the, shall I say, the literalist form of Christianity.
Okay.
At the time, it completely shattered my faith. I've come back to an understanding of a mystical understanding of Christianity that I feel comfortable with now. But at that time, it really sort of broke things down, and so at that point, the church had lost credibility for me, and I started looking in other areas. I started looking to the oracles. I started looking to astrology, numerology, tarot. I finally stumbled into a little bookstore at the time. I was living in Vancouver, BC, and I shouldn't say little because it's actually quite a big bookstore. It's called Banyan Books, and I went in there and I started talking to the girl behind the counter, and it was a kind of place I never would have gone into before this had happened.
Right.
And she did two things. She referred me to a chiropractor across the street, and she gave me the phone number of the former owner of the store. And what she said to me is, "It sounds to me like you're having Kundalini experiences." And at the time I was very poor and I couldn't afford any of the books. She actually gave me books, and she sent me home with them. And I went to the chiropractor, and he said, "It sounds like to me that you're having partial out-of-body experiences." Because in addition to the visions and dreams, I would have these horrific experiences that I now know of as are called sleep paralysis, where I would wake up, I would be paralyzed, I would be vibrating. I had horrific visions during these experiences. I would be awake and couldn't move, and I would know I was asleep, but I was awake, if that makes any sense.
Exactly.
And I thought I was losing my mind at that point. And the chiropractor said, "No, I think you're having out-of-body experiences. I think that's what the issue." And he was so matter-of-fact about it. And when I talked to the bookstore owner, Elliot, he said, "Put your feet and hands in cold water, and that'll ground out the energy, and you'll be okay." And between the two of them reassuring me, going from every night of these horrific, hellish, and I mean hellish, quite literally, hellish experiences, I went to what I now understand is the lower astral. I was being harassed by entities. It was just awful. And I went from that to where it would happen once every couple of days, then it went to once a week, once a month, and now it's been years since I've had an experience like that. And I think the reason why I went where I went and I had the experiences I had is because of the cultural conditioning I had. It was all fear-based. You're going to go to hell if you're not a proper Christian. And so, of course, that's where I went when I went out of body.
Exactly.
And it was just their matter-of-factness, their compassion, their understanding, their love-based approach rather than fear-based approach made a huge, huge difference in my attitude, and my acceptance of the experience made it so much easier to bear. But I still had a lot of work to do in terms of my empathic abilities and not absorbing other people's emotions. That took me a lot longer. I'm still working on that, frankly.
Now, when did you become aware of your empathic abilities, of your empathic self? Did those experiences come out before your awakening in 1980? I mean, did you have signs of them all throughout your life?
I did. They weren't. Everybody had a euphemism for it. They called it "you're too sensitive."
Yes.
And I'm probably, the listeners who are empathic themselves are probably chuckling themselves because they've heard that their whole lives. You're too sensitive. That's what everybody called it. You're too imaginative. You're too sensitive. But there were moments like when my grandmother called to say my grandfather was ill, and I went running down the street screaming that he was going to die, and in fact he did.
Right.
There were little moments like that everybody just sort of dismissed and pushed away. It wasn't until I was actually doing readings as a psychic that I even heard the word empath. And where it was really brought home to me was in one experience I was doing a psychic fair in Calgary. I was working with a wonderful tarot card reader named Norma Cowie. And Norma ran the psychic fairs at that point. And we had all been forced to purchase fortune tellers licenses to do this show. And we got into the show, and about a couple of hours into it, I wasn't making very much money. I was stressed, and I had a full-blown end-of-the-world panic attack. And one of the other psychics took me off, and she said, we're going to get you something to eat. You'll calm down. You'll feel better. So about 45 minutes later, we came back to our booths, and Norma's daughter was going around the fair putting signs on everybody's booth saying these readings are for fun and entertainment purposes only. And we asked her, what is this for? And she said, the police are at the front trying to shut the show down because there's an old Canadian law that says you cannot pretend to tell the future. So what Norma had done is she'd made this agreement with the police to put these signs on so that it would be entertainment, not actually telling the future. They were cool with it. So we went running back up to her, and we said, Norma, what happened? And she said, the police came, and this is what happened. And she said, it's really weird. Normally I would have totally freaked out. I would have had a complete panic attack, but nothing happened. It was like I was numb, like somebody sucked the feelings out of me. And me and the other psychic looked at each other, and we said, when did this happen? And she said, about 45 minutes ago.
Oh, wow.
I had literally not just felt her feelings in me along with her, I had sucked them completely out of her. And that was the point at which I said to myself, this can't be healthy for me.
Right.
And how many other places am I doing this without being aware that I do it? I would get feedback from people that would always say that, it's so restful whenever I'm around you. And I would always feel stressed. And until that moment, I didn't realize what the problem actually was. It wasn't that I was stressed. I was feeling their stress for them. And I didn't know how to shut that off.
Now, do you recall questioning, though, whenever these experiences happened? Did you ever recall questioning and thinking, well, I was just feeling fine 2 seconds ago?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, all the time. I thought I was crazy. I thought I was just crazy. I was incapable of managing emotions. And for a time, I had been depressed all of my life up until about 8 years ago. And 8 years ago, I took this amazing class with this fella that has become a close friend of mine. His name is James Roswell Quinn. He does these amazing classes, and they have nothing to do with psychic ability, which is the ironic part. Oh, yeah. At the time, it was called Lifestream. It's called Life Results now. If you look for The Love-Based Leader is his current book right now. It's about the 4 different reactions and how we let them get in our own way. And a friend of mine had sent me to that class because of the depression. And I realized that there were a couple of issues, and it's complicated, but for me the issue was not being able to set boundaries. Because I had grown up as a bullied kid. I didn't know where the boundaries were. I was terrified of other people, and I believe that many empaths develop, or I wouldn't say develop because I think it's a natural skill at some level, but it becomes less than ideal for them because they become so reliant on that ability to tell where other people's emotions are so that they can stay out of trouble.
Exactly.
I think it's a survival mechanism on that level. And so
exactly, yes.
I learned about that in that class. I learned how to overcome my depression in that class, and being a happier, healthier, more sane and sound person all around made a huge, huge difference in my life. I won't say that I don't sometimes still feel down or depressed or have my moments of frustration, but it's gone from like an 8 out of 10 to a 2 out of 10, and that is really what has made the huge difference in terms of managing my empathic abilities, knowing where my boundaries are, knowing what somebody else's emotions are, what are mine, what should I own, and what should I release and let go.
So I can imagine. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that I could imagine that you spent a great deal of time like working on yourself in a way that you really got to know yourself, know how you feel, and doing those constant checks.
Oh, yeah,
yourself.
all the time. To this day, the best advice I have to anybody going through something like this is keep a journal. Because what this issue is this is about knowing yourself. And I get a lot of people who just want to take a pill and make it go away. Well, there is a pill for this. It's called Prozac. And I was on it for a couple of years, and it worked really, really well. But unfortunately, the cost and the side effects and the other damage it was doing to my life and my psyche just weren't worth it in the end.
Exactly.
And this is, whoever you are, if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're saying, I just want to make it go away, the first message that I have for you is keep a journal. But the second thing is there's no magic wand that's going to make this go away. This is yours for life. You have to find a way to live with it. That's why I called the book Living with Your Psychic Gifts, because it's not about erasing them and making them go away, although 90% of the people that come to me with that mindset first.
Right, how to turn it off.
It's about learning, how to turn it off. Believe me, you don't want to turn it off, because if you manage to do that, and I did for a couple of years, it'll make you even more miserable than you are now.
Exactly.
So that is not the answer. It's not the answer. Learn how to live with it, learn how to manage it, learn how to see it as a gift. And you'll be a lot happier, and not only a lot happier, but a lot more effective in your life, and everybody around you will be a lot happier as well. And you'll find that what you're seeing right now as a curse really can be a gift.
Exactly. Totally agree. And everything that you said, those are all the things that most empaths, even if they're just finding out they're an empath, all of the things that you mentioned, those are like the bells that go off. Mm-hmm. Like, oh yeah, that happened to me. Oh yeah, that happened to me. Oh yeah, I would rather stay in my house rather than go out to the grocery store and be around people.
Oh yeah.
All of those things that you described are what every empath, even if they're just finding out, even if they're not quite sure yet if they're an empath, can totally relate to.
Absolutely.
And I always say, you don't have to live like that. You know what I mean?
You don't have to live like that.
Exactly. You can help yourself a great deal just by, I always say, as long as you just try. And that's the problem when we're an unskilled empath and we don't even know anything about empath. We don't know we don't know anything about empathy. We're not trying to control it because we don't know that we have this thing going on. So then once you are aware,
it feels like it's coming from outside of yourself at first, that you're being attacked.
Exactly.
A lot of people feel that way at first.
Exactly, because believe me, I went through my time when, I went to visit a psychic reader too because I thought I was being attacked, almost feeling like harassed by something that was outside myself. And I think that many times empaths go through that where they literally feel like something's messing in my life. Something's messing with me. But now when I watched some of your videos that you have on your website, and one of the ones I watched was one where you did an astrology reading. It was very, very, very good. I was wondering, often when you do an astrology reading, does within the reading, does information that points to a person being an empath ever come up?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You want to look for strong water signs, water and air signs. There are occasionally, with the sun sign isn't the only thing that you want to be looking at. You want to be looking at sun, moon, ascendant, but the overall elemental balance will tend to be strong in the water and the air. Sometimes there are good psychics who are fire signs as well. Very rare does a heavy earth sign person exhibit empathic ability. In my case, I have an Aquarius air sign moon, a Libra air sign sun, and a Scorpio rising ascendant. Plus, I also have Neptune, which rules psychic ability, conjunct Mars on my ascendant. So
wow.
That's an incredibly powerful, sort of wounded psychic. That we call Chiron the wounded healer. Neptune Mars is the wounded psychic. It's the indication of Mars, which is the element of aggression, on top of Neptune, which is the element of vision. And so as a little kid, I was constantly bullied for being too imaginative, too creative, and too intuitive. And the more of that abuse that I took, the more tender and sensitive that area of my life became, and that is a pattern I see a lot with other empaths and psychics.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I heard that all my life to the point where now it's just normal for me to hear it. Those people that still say, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's me. It's almost like I fully accepted it.
Yeah.
I'm proud of the fact that I'm a daydreamer. That used to be something that when we were young and we were in school, it was a bad thing to drift off into daydream.
Oh, yes.
And now that I'm older and I've embraced my true self, now you find yourself, it's like, I want that. It's a good thing. It was never really a bad thing. It's just I didn't really know what was going on. All those times you drifted off and you were completely 100% lost in a daydream, zoned out, actually in a different brainwave state. We didn't know what was going on. We were just told
especially
that
not as a kid.
Exactly. We were just told that was something we weren't supposed to do, because we were supposed to be paying attention in class. And, I mean, I never stopped being a daydreamer. And I think that with empaths, and I often tell people that, I'm like, it's okay to talk to yourself and it's okay to daydream. It's okay to get lost. It's almost like meditative.
Exactly. It is a form of meditation. It's a form of alternative awareness, and it is, a very powerful experience for a lot of people. And we do a lot of damage to children when we suggest that they should not pursue it.
Right. And I am not, I do coaching, but I am not huge with coaching people on children issues, with parenting. But the one thing I find myself saying a lot to parents is, they're not an adult, they're a child. Focus on letting them be a child. Focus on, don't keep saying, I want to stop them from doing this. I want to stop. They're being a child. Let them be a child. They'll be grown up one day.
The thing is that parents can do as much damage by being overly enthusiastic about this as they can by trying to dismiss it or shove it under the table. And that is something that parents need to understand. There's a middle path, as the Buddha would say, and it is very important that you don't overly emphasize the ability at the same time that you don't overly dismiss it, because you can do damage either way.
Exactly.
If you overly dismiss it, you can lead to the kind of situation that I ended up in. If you overly push it, you can end up with some of the, I will say the well-known psychic names that I won't say at this point in the conversation, with the huge egos and the bizarre pronunciations. You don't want to end up with that, and you can make things worse for them by overly emphasizing on it. The good approach is to be interested, but to let the child lead you forward at their pace.
Right.
Answer the questions as they come up.
I do get a lot of people who will, and I'm sure you do also, who will ask, what does your family and your kids think about what you do? And I always joke, and I'm like, my son thinks I don't work. My son, recently, he asked me, why don't I get a job at his school like one of the other kids' parents, because he thought that would be cool because I could be there and see him every day. So he actually thinks that I don't work. And, as far as my, friends and family, it's like I always tell people, you will get to a point where you don't feel that it's important for everyone to know who you are and that you can do this and that, and you will accept them for who they are, and you'll be okay with how they accept you.
Yeah, I think our self-acceptance is the most important thing. The other that was another huge issue that I learned in the classes I mentioned. His name is James Roswell Quinn, but I call him Ross. So don't get confused with if I say what I learned from Ross is that I was spending an awful lot of my time caring about people who weren't worthy to shine my shoes.
Right.
And almost all of my time, and that was the core of the problem for me. And what we've got to realize as psychics and empaths is that yes, this is a mystical psychic thing, but it's also a psychological thing. You're still using your brain. Your brain is at play, and it's important to know who you are.
Right.
And it's important to accept who you are. If you cannot accept who you are, you're always going to have a problem with this. Always. It's never going to go away.
Oh, exactly. I totally agree. Now, tell me, for a person who is an empath, or even if they're just finding out they're an empath, how do you think your book would help them, your book Living with Your Psychic Gifts?
Well, I think, first of all, that they're going to get reassurance that they're not the only person that's having this experience. That I have talked to thousands of people in the last 20 years or so who've had very similar experiences, that they're not crazy, that there are simple things that they can do to make this experience more bearable at the very least, and potentially life transforming at the very best. I'm in the process of rewriting the book because I've done so much work with Ross. I'm including some of the elements of what I have learned in his class for the next book that I'm working on. And it's going to really focus more on self-acceptance and self-understanding within the context of being an empath. And we spend so much of our energy and emphasis on looking at other people.
Right.
We really need to look at ourselves. But in terms of this particular book, it's got the basics. It's what I call Psychic 101. If you have absolutely no experience with this and it's scaring the you-know-what out of you, read this book. It's designed to be short. It's a small little book. You can really read it in a couple of afternoons. The core of the material I've always put for free on my website because I feel that is something that should not have a monetary gateway in front of it.
Right.
Because there are so many people suffering so badly. The book really expands on those techniques and shares some of my experiences with it so that people get a more well-rounded understanding of somebody else's experience so they don't feel quite so alone. But if all you're looking for is, I want to shut it down, I want to make it go away, go to the website, and on the website the psychic protection techniques are there. But that's only going to help you so far.
Right.
And for me, it only helped me so far. I mean, before I went to Ross's class, I remember one experience where we went up north, and we went up into an area called Tobermory, and where there was literally... In this particular section of the province, there are no people. There's nobody there, and that time of year. And it was at one of the most stressful periods of my life. It was just before I took Ross's class, and I was in the middle of nowhere. And for the first time in like 25 years, I didn't feel lonely. I didn't feel stressed. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel alone. Right. And the irony of that caught my attention. Here I am in the middle of nowhere with literally the 45 minutes to the closest person. And I feel at peace for the first time, really in my life. And then it hit me that I was living in a, stressed out suburban neighborhood with all these lonely, miserable, unhappy people. Of course I was miserable all the time. Right. And I just sat down and I bawled for a couple of hours. And I had already, I'd written this book already. When I wrote the book in the mid to late 80s, I wrote it at the time originally because at that point there was Dion Fortune's Psychic Protection, and there was nothing else. Right. And so it sort of evolved along with me, and I had that understanding, but it took that moment of insight for it really to reach deep down into my soul and for me to realize how, yes, I'd come so far, but how far I still had to go.
Wow, that's very powerful.
Yeah, it was, and I was just, the good thing about it was I was ready for the information I got at Ross's class at that point, because I think in a class like that, and there are other classes, other teachers that I think are quite good. Caroline Mice, I love her stuff. I think she's just awesome. She's sort of a mystical version of Ross. He's more of the sort of down-to-earth psychological perspective on things, but even the big names that Tony Robbins. Some of his stuff is very, very good. Absorb all of that you can if you're in this boat.
Exactly.
The psychic protection, it will take you 10% of the way, but this other stuff, the personal growth stuff, the self-acceptance stuff, that's your warp drive engine.
Right.
But some people have to start with a paddle boat.
Right,
and
exactly.
that's what living with your psychic gifts is. It's for the beginners. It's for people who've come out of fundamentalist or atheist even backgrounds where they have no exposure to this sort of thing, where they literally don't know what the first step is. And there are a lot of people in that position right now.
Oh, yes. I mean, I often get a lot of people to my website and emailing me saying, okay, I just figured out I'm an empath. What do I do next? I'm very confused. Where do I go from here?
Tell them to read my book.
Right.
That will be the first step for them.
Exactly. And I am huge at recommending that people start reading, because one of the best ways you can help yourself is by having knowledge. Without it, you will feel lost. Without it, you will feel lost. But if you at least, and I think some people are afraid that there's so much they won't understand. And, it was the same way for me when I first started out. I did a lot of reading, and half of it I didn't understand at the time. But I took what I did understand and what I was ready for at that time. So people also have to understand that when we recommend to read a book, when you're going down this path, you don't usually just read a book one time. You read it, you put it on the shelf, then a little while later, as you've moved forward, take the book down again and reread it again, because you will get more and more understanding every time you do that.
Yeah, and it's amazing. You'll do that, and you'll go like, this guy wasn't that smart the last time I read this book.
I know. I don't remember him saying all this. This is really good.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and sometimes that takes the form of a book. The internet is the other huge, great tool for people. If you don't want to read, or heaven forbid, there are some people who can't read. Right. There are the videos that are on my site. We do have a discussion group on Yahoo Groups called Psychic Gifts. There's about 250 people in that group who will be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have in a very accepting and understanding format. That's not to say that they will always agree with you. I always put that disclaimer in there.
Right, exactly.
People are allowed to disagree in my group. But if you come in a respectful manner and you ask your questions, they'll be more than happy to help you. And there are no stupid questions on this, because we've all been at the beginning.
Can you tell everyone how to get to your group on Yahoo Groups?
You can get to it through the website.
Okay, through the website, right?
Yeah, it's listed on the website. It's called Psychic Gifts, all one word, Psychic Gifts at Yahoo.
Okay, and I'll make sure I put that on my website just in case they're looking, so that they can easily find it. I'll make sure I put a link on my website, because it's really great, because I know in the beginning I was a member of a couple of different groups, and it really helped immensely. It helps with not feeling alone. It does give you people that are going to be there that will help just by reassuring you.
Yeah, exactly. Just that reassurance was everything to me in the beginning.
Oh yeah.
And they can also friend me on Facebook. Just look for B Jasmine at Facebook. I'm happy to. I do this as a business. Yes, I do consultations. I don't like to call them readings, because I'm much more of a coach, and I'm much more focused on other empaths and other intuitives.
I can tell that by watching your video. Watching your videos, I could tell that.
And what I want to do is if I'm giving advice for free, then I want everybody to be able to read it. So the ways you can do that are, you can ask a question on my blog friend me on Facebook and ask a question there, or go on the discussion group and ask a question there. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anybody may have, totally free of charge, but it has to be in a public forum. I understand that some people don't want to have friends or relatives or coworkers or employers know these things. Understand that then you need to pay for that privacy.
Right.
Because if I'm doing it on the group, then not only you get to see that, but everybody else who reads it gets to see it as well.
Exactly.
And I think that that's a fair price to pay for the information that you're getting.
Right. And, that is an issue. I have many people, and it's funny, you're going to laugh, but I have actually coached people on the phone where until the second session I did not know their real name because they weren't comfortable yet.
Yeah. It's still taboo in many cultures.
Right. And it's okay, but also I always tell people, well, you have to realize if you're going to leave a comment on a site, if you're going to join a message board and you're going to leave comments there and you're using your real name, that is going to hit Google.
Yeah.
We can't stop it. We can't
Google's stop it, but there are ways. Yeah, Google will find it, but there are ways of doing it anonymously. You can create as many Facebook accounts as you want, and you can put Scared Psychic as your name on Facebook.
Right.
And, there are ways to do it. It takes a little more time to protect your identity. That I understand that. At the same time, I think it's fair that other people get to benefit by whatever it is that you learn as well. And there are ways to do that and protect your anonymity. I value that. I understand that. I mean, I still, that relative that you mentioned is still alive, is still with us, and has friended me on Facebook. So I get it. I do get it, yeah.
Exactly. And it takes a little while. People have to understand it does take a little while to get comfortable with what other people know about you, especially the people who have known you all your lives, because as far as they're concerned, the way it's usually put to me is, well, I've known you for a long time. When did you become a different person? That's how they see it. They're like, okay, well, I thought I knew who you were. So how did you become this person? And they literally see it as this isn't the person that I know, from the past. It takes a while for you to get comfortable with that, and for you to get comfortable with, explaining, okay, well, this is who I am now, and it does take time. And you have to be give yourself that time to get comfortable with it. But I think you gradually will. I can remember I did go through some name changes, where I would sign up message boards and I would have the nicknames.
Yes.
And the name that I would actually sign, I would never sign my actual, full name. I'd abbreviate it somehow. So I went through that, too. And then finally one day, I just wanted to be me again. I missed just being able to be me. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. And I just one day, just like that, I don't know how to explain it, I became comfortable with it.
I think a lot of people are quite legitimately afraid that if they come out and say, I have these experiences, that they will be making a claim to some kind of specialness. And I really, and that their relatives, their friends, their loved ones will go, well, look at Mr. or Miss High and Mighty Psychic.
Right.
That is a legitimate fear. That does happen. I have had that happen. And what makes you think you're so special to own this title? And my response to that is that at this point, I don't think it's all that special.
Well, no.
I think that's a myth in our culture that, we all have this ability to some degree. Some of us choose to focus on it and to nurture it and to grow it, and others don't. But it's not a special thing. And for even the people who are making that accusation, and for some people who actually fit the accusation, you have to realize that there are more psychics, more empaths than not.
Right.
That while it's a valuable skill to learn and to use, and I think we need to value it more in our culture in a kind of ironic way, it doesn't put you aside or make you special or better than anybody else. It certainly doesn't make you any more spiritual than anybody else. One famous guru, and I wish I could remember the guy's name, he said, if you were a not so nice person before your enlightenment, you'd be a not so nice person after.
Right, exactly.
He was talking about enlightenment, but this same process applies to psychic ability. Just because you have psychic ability doesn't mean you're a spiritually advanced being. People have to wrap their head around that.
Exactly. They are two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
And now we actually have a caller on the line, so we could take the caller right now and see if maybe they have a question for you.
Sure.
Hello, caller. You're on the air. How can I help you?
Oh, hi. I was listening. I didn't know if you were giving readings or...
Did you have a question?
I'm hoping finances were going to appear. I'm kind of in a dispute or in a legal matter.
Brandy, did you want to give a reading or did you want me to answer his question?
I think you go ahead and answer his question. For me, I prefer not to.
Okay.
You go ahead.
Okay. And now, sir, what's your name?
Nathaniel.
Nathaniel, your question was about finances.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you are going to have a change when it comes to your finances.
Wonderful.
Now, I don't know how soon this is going to be, however.
Probably 2 or 3 months.
No, it's going to actually be longer than that. It's going to be longer than that. It's going to be within the next 6 months.
Oh.
So if that's helpful to you, but you are going to have a financial change, and it is going to be within the next approximately 6 months.
It should be pretty positive, or...
I'm not picking up whether it's positive or negative, just that there is going to be a change with your financial situation within the next 6 months.
Okay, well, thank you.
So you've got something to look for.
If you don't, I'm sorry for interrupting here, but I will say this. I think that the core of the issue is passivity here.
Passivity.
You have to get passivity. You have to get active.
Okay.
And I don't mean just in terms of your job search situation. You have to get out and get yourself out into the world. You have to start networking. You have to start being around people. The vision I got in my head, and I originally didn't want to do a reading, but it's coming to me, so I'm going to throw it out there. The vision I have in my head of you right now is you being stuck in a cave. Mm-hmm. And that may not be literally the case. It may be emotionally the case that the thing that's blocking you from your success is you. Do you understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And well, you have to get out of your own way. And when you really, really feel that down in your gut, then things will start to change. And I would concur with the timeline that you've just been given. But it's going to have to come from you. You're going to have to pull out. I wouldn't even necessarily recommend that you focus strictly on the job search. Just get out there and be around more people. The things that will improve your finances, your business, your job search, whatever it is for you, however that works for you, will be in your connection to other people.
All right. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for calling, and we look forward to you listening some more. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I am so glad, Brandy, that you got a chance to answer one of the callers, and I was really actually hoping that we would get a caller where you could at least give one reading for a person, and the reason why is because I thought that would be a great way. I mean, I watched some of your videos, so I just thought that would be an excellent way for a person to get an idea of really what it is that we do, that we don't just answer questions, but this is more of a coaching and a helping a person to create their own reality, to be more involved in creating it.
Yeah, I agree. The reason I didn't want to jump in there at first is because right at the first in that particular caller I wasn't getting anything, but as soon as you went into it, wham!
Isn't it funny how that happens? You got to wait for the energies to stir up a little.
Yeah, so that's exactly what happened there. And I sometimes do a couple of other radio shows, and it's funny at work. I always go in like I don't want to do readings, but then all of a sudden I end up finding myself doing it. And the funny thing is, for a lot of people who are empaths and who are avoiding things, if you ever did succeed in being able to turn off the ability, you'll find you miss it, and you'll find it comes back to you just in this kind of manner.
Right. It's something that I can liken it to when we're going through an energy shift. When we're going through an energy shift and where the energies are adjusting, usually during a couple of those days, I kind of actually feel like, okay, is it still there? Did I lose it?
Yes. I know what you mean. Yes.
It kind of goes subtle for a couple of days to the point where you're like, wait a minute, I don't even feel like I was feeling 2 days ago. And that is how I would think a person would feel if they attempted to turn it off. Like, okay, some part of me is missing.
That's exactly what it felt like. I went through a period of a couple of years where I didn't do readings at all. And I to this day I'm very kind of choosy about who I take on as a client at this point, because I am so sensitive that that it's still difficult for me to clear their emotions out afterwards.
Right.
And it's taken me a long time to come back to the point of actually welcoming it.
Yes, and I can imagine it probably also took you a little while to be able to use protection effectively. The learning of doing it is easy, but getting to that point where your energy is strong enough so it's solid protection.
Well, you know what? At this point, even though I call it psychic protection, it really isn't about protection. It's about being secure, which is a different thing than protection. Protection means I'm afraid of these experiences and I want to block them out.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And this is the next book that I write will take a kind of subtle but very important shift into I'm strong and nothing that comes my way will trouble me, which is a very different thing from building walls of protection. Right. Yeah, I think the walls of protection are important in the first stage, but I think we have to come to a point where we're comfortable without them.
Right.
And that is the sort of stage that I'm at right now myself, where I'm sort of standing still behind my walls of protection saying, I really need to drop these. I really need to let this down, and I need to know that I'm going to be safe without them.
Right, and I know exactly what you mean, because at some point I know that I went from feeling that I needed this solid brick wall protection to needing a protection that was different, to needing a protection where things could actually come through still.
Yes.
And
it's not just about them coming through, though. It's about a state of mind that you have of security within yourself, that you're going to be okay no matter what comes your way.
Exactly. And I have really enjoyed having you as a guest on my show today. And I don't know when your next book is coming out, but possibly after your next book comes out, maybe you could come back on again.
I would love to come on any time that you'll have me. I don't know when the next book will come out, because right now I'm working a day job that's keeping me kind of busy. And so I'm hoping within the next year it will come out. But any time that you'd like to have me on, I would be more than delighted.
Oh, yes, and I will be getting in contact with you so that you can come on again. I've really enjoyed you, and I'm sure the listeners have really learned a lot from you, as I know I have. And
I really enjoyed it, too.
And I look forward to talking to you again. And to all our listeners, I'm glad that you could listen in today. And give your website again real quick.
It's psychicprotection.net.
And there you can go and not only watch her videos, but you'll see the link to her book as well. And I hope you have a good day.
Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome.